The committee will come to order. A quorum being present, the committee meets today to consider a resolution adopting the rules of the committee of the 113th Congress. I'd like to begin by welcoming back my ranking member, Elijah Cummings, and those members on both sides of the aisle that worked so hard in the last Congress to brand this committee as the committee that works harder, holds more substantive hearings on waste, fraud, and abuse in the Federal Government than any other and all others combined. I think we can all agree, particularly after yesterday's inaugural address, that there are challenges to our government. There are challenges that our President put out in no uncertain terms yesterday, and there are challenges that occur under both Republican and Democratic administrations. There's no question that, as the President said yesterday, that he knew that in a time of scarce resources, in order to invest, we were also going to have to find savings and make hard decisions. I want to embrace that because, in fact, this committee can do more, if we do it right, to ensure that the maximum amount of dollars are available for the legitimate uses of government. Today, this committee is organizing itself in a different way than we did 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I chose to have 7 subcommittees. I did so because I thought that would be the best way to flesh out the maximum number of areas that needed addressed. I still do. But I also believe that we now need to focus on legislative agenda and specific metrics that will allow us to, in fact, find targeted savings in the Federal system that do not compromise the health and welfare of America or the legitimate pay and benefits of the Federal workforce. I believe to do that, we're going to have to work together in a way that we did not in the previous Congress. The ranking member and I have discussed a number of ways we can work together. It is my intention to work very, very hard on a bipartisan effort to find those areas in which both Republicans and Democratic members can agree that we should prioritize the search for legitimate savings in the Federal workforce and the elimination of waste, fraud, and abuse in government. After our organizational meeting, we will enter a hearing on IT procurement process reform. This is one that the ranking member and I have discussed. It's one that's bipartisan. It's one where we know that we depend on information technology. We know from countless hearings that our history of what we try to do and what we write off in the billions of dollars is legendary in IT. For that reason, I believe this committee is uniquely positioned because we do not have any sacred cows in any part of government. We do not care whether the savings comes out of DOD or Department of State or any other part of government. What we want to do is make sure that our dollars are well spent. And I think this committee can do so in a way in which we make the procurement changes, let the appropriators and the other authorizing committees then find ways to use those additional funds freed up either for better IT or, in fact, for other uses of government or, in the odd and unusual circumstance, an actual reduction in spending. And with that, I'd like to recognize my partner in this, Mr. Cummings, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank you for your words. And let me welcome all of our returning members and the new members who are joining the Oversight Committee in this, the 113th Congress. It is an honor to have you here, and I look forward to working with all of you. This committee has great potential to do enormous good on behalf of the American people, our constituents. Our jurisdiction is perhaps the most wide-ranging in the Congress. We can examine broad issues across multiple agencies. We can drill down and scrutinize the smallest individual action. We have significant flexibility in determining the course of our investigations, and we have tremendous power to demand information to inform those inquiries, probably more power than any other committee in the Congress. To me, this committee is most effective when its members work together, when we combine forces to focus on issues we agree on, and when we find common ground to pursue joint solutions. But most important, when we can move from common ground to higher ground. Personally, I hold very strong convictions about the policies I believe should guide our nation. I know the Chairman has equally strong beliefs. I respect those beliefs, some of which are polar opposite of mine, but I respect them. But as the President said yesterday, when we come together, that is when we are strongest. That is where we can make the biggest difference. And that is what the American people want us to do. We are here at this moment in history for a reason. During the last Congress, much of our committee's work seemed to be colored by politics, and perhaps that was inevitable. During this Congress, however, we have a new opportunity to reset our agenda and focus on actually improving the lives of those we serve, improving their lives. The child who simply wants to be somebody, living in poverty. The senior citizen who's worked hard for many, many years and now finds themselves in ill health. Those folks, the ones that meet us at the town hall meetings, the ones that came up to me yesterday and just said, Cummings, all I've got is my Medicare and my Social Security. That's all I got. Save it. Accomplishing these goals will require serious effort on both sides, Democrats and Republicans alike. So today I have both a commitment and I also have a request. First, on our side, we will commit that in every single thing we do, whether it involves hearings, witnesses, subpoenas, or other actions pursued by the committee, our first course of action will be to try to work together to seek common ground and, where possible, higher ground. We will support the committee's authority and prerogatives, particularly with the agencies that our committee oversees. When we disagree, we pledge always to express our disagreement respectfully. In response, we ask for something very straightforward. We want your first instinct in all matters relating to the committee to be to consult with us and to consider seriously what we have to say. I often remind my colleagues that all of us represent at least 700,000 people. I want every single one of them to have a voice in this very, very important committee and in our discussions. We would like the #1 item on your checklist to be, how can we work with the minority to get this done? I've served as both a chairman and a ranking member, and I understand that it is easy to simply ignore the minority. Easy, but not always wise. Sometimes we may be able to find common ground if we just have the chance to talk first. Often compromise enables us to reach a better solution. And when we are united, the committee is much more effective. So this is our pledge. We will endeavor to support your efforts and aggressively seek out areas on which we can collaborate. And we ask that you consult with us and respect the views we offer. Finally, I know our staffs have already been meeting to discuss ways the committee can begin this process. And I am encouraged by the progress made so far, and I want to thank the staffs. And I want the staff to know that we encourage them to lead the way on this. If you have ideas, bring them forward to me and to the chairman. And let me pause here to say something to both staffs. I have tremendous respect for both the Republican staff and the Democratic staff. I see how hard you work. I know you have to race to the babysitter in the morning and race home in the evening and stay late at night. On our side of the aisle, most of our staff took a 5% cut 2 years ago in their pay. But every one of them said, we will serve because we believe in this country. We will sacrifice. But they also said something else. They said that we sacrifice, then others should sacrifice too. And so I want to thank both staffs for what you do. You're often unseen, unnoticed, appear to be unappreciated and unapplauded. But I will not let another day go by without thanking you. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your courtesies in working with us over the past several weeks. I really appreciate it. I must tell you, it has made me feel so optimistic about what we can accomplish. I thank you for the meeting we had a few days ago when we talked about some common things that we can work on so that we can uplift the American people and make their lives better. Last, I've often said we have one life to live. This is it. There's no other life over in that other room. This is the life. And I think it is our duty to help every single one of our constituents live the very, very best life that they can. That should be our duty. And I trust and I know that God will be on our side as we do that. May God bless our journey, and I remind you to trust the journey.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, of course.
I would like to take this opportunity to say that you said the most important thing, particularly for our new members. We do have hardworking staff on both sides who, if anyone's going to bring us together and find those common areas to focus on, it's going to be them. So I want to thank you for those comments, because I do think that, particularly for the new members, to appreciate on both sides some of the men and women you see, they all get paid less than you all do. They all work every bit as hard and get no accolades by comparison. So I join with the ranking member in applauding our staff today. Thank you. Although it's a silent applause, as you noticed. I would also like to note that I'll keep the record open for all opening statements. Included in my written introduction was a set of statements on returning and new members. But since it only included Republicans, I'm going to deviate a little bit and ask that we go down the dais in alternating for any new or returning member to introduce themselves, take one moment so that members here can get to know you. Most of you will be new, but some people like Mr. Duncan are returning, and I'd like to take that moment so you say what you have to say on both sides of the aisle. Jimmy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm returning after being absent for a couple of years because this has always been one of the most active and meaningful and enjoyable and significant committees in the Congress, and I look forward to returning. Thank you very much for allowing me to do so.
Your staff will help you find that button, get it on, and begin addressing.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Matthew Cartwright from Pennsylvania, representing Scranton and Wilkes-Barre and most of northeastern Pennsylvania. It's my honor to serve on this committee and look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Doc?
I'm Doc Hastings from Washington's 4th District, and I also have the pleasure of chairing the Natural Resources Committee, where we endeavor to do a lot of oversight, and I hope that the work that we do there and the work that you do here will complement each other in that regard. So it's nice for me to be here. Thank you.
Whoever's next on your list. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Mark Pocan. I'm serving the 2nd District in Wisconsin, a freshman. Just finished 14 years in the Wisconsin legislature and still, for now, my 25th year of owning a small business, a specialty printing firm in Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cynthia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to join this committee for my first term on the committee, although I'm not a freshman member of Congress, and a great pleasure and a great draw for coming on this committee. We're both the chairman and the ranking member, so it's an honor, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Ranking Member, to join you on this committee, as well as the fine membership, and to be part of the fine work I've watched you do over the years. Thank you. I'm from Wyoming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Tammy Duckworth. I represent Illinois' 8th Congressional District, a district whose territory has been represented by both the great Mr. Henry Hyde and also the great Ms. Melissa Bean. My constituents sent me here to find practical solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. And if someone ever says Henry Hyde, I always remind people I served on both committees with him, Judiciary and Foreign Affairs. And there's a reason that when you go through the Capitol, you'll see a room named after him. He was a legendary figure in both Judiciary and in Foreign Affairs.
Yes.
So you have big shoes to fill there.
Yes, sir. I understand.
Thank you. And Mr. Massey?
Hi, I'm Thomas Massey from Kentucky. It's an honor to serve with Chairman Issa on this committee. I will let you know in 2 years if it's also a pleasure to serve on this committee.
It'll take less time than that to figure it out. Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Doug Collins. I serve in the newly created 9th District of Georgia. This is the seat that Georgia gained in the last redistricting cycle. I'm a pleasure to be here to serve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Meadows?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mark Meadows from North Carolina's 11th Congressional District. Look forward to serving with you on behalf of the hardworking American taxpayers to create a more effective, efficient, and accountable government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bentivolio?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Kerry Bentivolio. Sing it when you say it.
Is that anything like Desjardins?
Bentivolio. From Michigan 11th. I'm a veteran of 27 years, both full and part-time military service, and I'm here once again to serve my country and the 11th District of Michigan. Thank you.
Mr. DeSantis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ron DeSantis from Florida's 6th District. Constitutional government means accountable government, and this committee will help ensure the accountability that is essential for a free society. I'm honored to be serving on this committee. I look forward to serving as a watchdog for the hardworking taxpayers of my district and our nation, and ensuring that our government is responsible to the people it serves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, one and all. The committee will now consider a resolution adopting the rules of the committee. Without objection, the resolution adopting the rules of the committee will be considered as read and open for amendment at any time. The resolution has already been distributed and is in a folder at each of your desks. The clerk will designate the resolution.
The resolution of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, adoption of the rules of the committee, U.S. House of Representatives, 113th Congress.
Now that all of the freshmen and returning members have spoken a little bit, does any other member wish to speak on the resolution? Does any member wish to offer an amendment? If there is no further discussion, do you want to speak on it? Okay, we recognize the ranking member to speak on the resolution.
I'll be very brief. We have been in negotiations with regard to the rules, and we're pleased. So again, we support the rules.
Thank you. And that is the kind of start that I hope we have every day. If there's no further discussion, I move the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform approve the resolution adopting the rules of the committee. The question is on adopting the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The resolution is agreed to. And this one we don't have to send anywhere. Lastly, the subcommittee assignments also are at each of your places. Now, recognizing that if this is correct, Mr. Cummings, You still have this many vacancies, right? Recognizing there are significant vacancies, as I go through the chairman of the subcommittees, I would ask unanimous consent of the committee that the chairman and ranking member be able to place additional individuals for their seating on the subcommittee, even if there is not an intervening full committee hearing between now and the next time. We'll make it official at the next time, but I'd ask that as the ranking member comes up with members for the subcommittees, that they simply be placed on the subcommittee by unanimous consent. Without objection, so ordered. The assignments of the subcommittee will be as follows. Mr. John Mica is Chairman of the Subcommittee on Government Operations, which is the core of this committee. We were the Government Ops Committee before anything else. And of course, Mr. Mica is the former Chairman of the Transportation Committee. Mr. Jim Jordan is Chairman of the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Job Creation, and Regulatory Affairs. Mr. Jason Chaffetz will be Chairman of the Subcommittee on National Security, a committee he held in the last Congress also. Mr. James Lankford is the Chairman of the Subcommittee on Energy Policy, Health Care and Entitlements, and Mr. Blake Farenthold is Chairman of the Subcommittee on Federal Workforce, the United States Postal, love doing patent, that's a different committee we serve on, Postal Service, and the Census. I might note for Ms. Norton that the decision was to keep the District of Columbia at the full committee. We believe that, I think more than anything else within our purview, that working at the full committee at all times for the District of Columbia is important. And I want to thank Ms. Norton for her assistance in the last Congress, I think making that very clear that we do best what we do at the highest levels when it comes to our relationship with the men and women that run the District of Columbia. And with that, I recognize Mr. Cummings for introduction of his ranking members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A ranking member for the Subcommittee on National Security will be Congressman John Tierney. Congressman Tierney previously served as both Chairman and ranking member of the Subcommittee on National Security and Foreign Affairs. The ranking member of the Subcommittee on Government Operations will be Gerald E. Connolly. Representative Connolly has worked very tirelessly to enhance the efficiency of the Federal Government's procurement process and reform the Federal Government's operations in a technology-driven environment. The ranking member of the Subcommittee on Federal Workforce, U.S. Postal and Census will be Representative Stephen F. Lynch. Congressman Lynch led efforts to protect the rights and abilities of Federal workers while being a longtime advocate for improving the United States Postal Service, and he served as the ranking member on the U.S. Postal Service and Labor Policy Subcommittee in the 112th Congress. Jackie Spear will head up and be the ranking member on the Subcommittee for Energy Policy, Health Care, and Entitlements. As a key member of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, Congresswoman Spear has been an outspoken advocate for the protection of women's rights and a constant supporter of protecting consumers with her support of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Finally, the ranking member for the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Job Creation, and Regulatory Affairs is a freshman. He will be ranking member Matt Cartwright. As a freshman member of the House, elected to represent Pennsylvania's 17th Congressional District, Congressman Cartwright previously served as an attorney with the firm of Munley and Cartwright, helping middle-class families. And as ranking member, Congressman Cartwright will continue to work on behalf of the middle class, seniors, and our nation's veterans. And we welcome all of our chairmen. We welcome all of our ranking members. You have a lot of responsibility, and we anxiously look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. As we close this portion and go to the hearing, which I ask you all to remain for, it will be a pretty darn important hearing over the next 2 years. I want to say just two things. First of all, we pick up where we left off at the end of the last Congress. I think whether it's postal reform, where we came so close, Mr. Cummings and I were back and forth at the Senate, and we could feel and taste how close we were to having something that would bring some relief to the postal workers who have been waiting for a reform, and of course to the ratepayers who have been seeing the deterioration of profitability into losses. But it goes without saying, it also includes initiatives like Ms. Norton and I have worked on for the District of Columbia and getting them more control over their budget in a timely fashion. So I admonish all of you to, if you were not here in the last Congress, get up to speed, because these bills will be dropping, we will be picking it up, and we will assume that the compromises and the kinds of gains we made in the last Congress is where we start. We don't go back to our corners and then say, well, we'll compromise together later. We start where we got to so that we can get to workable legislation as soon as possible. Lastly, with the indulgence of the ranking member, I pledge to meet with the ranking member every week, at least once, to talk about the schedule. I would ask that the subcommittee ranking members and the subcommittee chairman do the same. We cannot simply get together when we're going to mark something up, or get together when there's a hearing. Planning for hearings, looking out at what you might do, and trying to get a buy-in of what you might do better is going to be important for this committee. As the ranking member said in his opening statement, we have the broadest jurisdiction of the Congress. That means we have the hardest time focusing on what's important. If we're going to focus on what's important, it will be decided between the two parties whenever possible, finding what is important to both parties. So I pledge to do that with Mr. Cummings. I also would like to have meetings of chairman and ranking members and subcommittee chairman and ranking members whenever possible. But I would say that certainly the subcommittees need to make sure that they guarantee each other a weekly meeting. You might even alternate buying each other lunch. Mr. Cummings.
Mr. Chairman, I'm so glad you said what you just said, and I know you mean it. There's something that I say to my staff, Mr. Chairman, and as I celebrated my 62nd birthday a week ago, it rings with me every single day. And that is, I don't know how long I have to be on this earth. And I want to use every single moment I have on this earth to be effective and efficient. Effective and efficient. And what you just said, I think, will help us be more effective and efficient in what we do. And so I thank you for that. I really do.
Thank you. And with that, we stand adjourned. As quickly as they can set up for the hearing, we'll begin the hearing. So about 3 or 4 minutes, you might just want to stay seated.